Good afternoon. It is July the 11th, and I just wanted to make a quick update on some of my in-ground figs that are actually in fabric pots. I call it my ground bag method, and they are secure in grow bags in the ground. And this one, this particular variety is Sultane, and I featured this last year several times. It's just a wonderful fig, and I wanted to show a progress. I wanted to basically report a progress update on this method. And now this tree was planted in the ground in May after the danger of frost, or just slightly before the danger of frost was over. And it was around May 10th or so, or maybe just a little before that. But I thought that there wouldn't be any additional freezes. I was pretty sure. Usually by May 10th there's no more freeze in my area, which is 7A. And you can see how well it's doing. It just is doing really well. It has an abundance of fruit everywhere. There's no issues at all. There's going to be an abundance of ripe figs in a month or so. And down here you can see how it's still in the grow bag. Needs a little water, I can see. I was away for a few days. Okay, so let's just move along very quickly. I wanted to show a few varieties. Right now I just want to do a ground bag update, and there's a couple more here that I think are doing marvelously well. As you can see, now this one's in a 10-gallon pot, and this is my Smith from last year, and you will see it in other videos. It's just gotten too big. It's an easy 7 foot tall. It's gotten too big for the greenhouse. I could have kept it in there, but it wanted its freedom, and I've got limited room in there, and of course right now I don't need to put any figs in the greenhouse. But I wanted to show you, but I have them in there now. I'm going to be taking them out in the sunshine. I just got back from vacation, and my son had them in the greenhouse because of the storm. We had a bad storm here. Of course, I'm sure you know about that. But look at the production of figs on this Smith. It's just absolutely loaded with an abundance of fruit everywhere you look. Just figs everywhere. Every one I'm going to is a different branch, and it's just, now this tree can support, and there's more. Look, now this tree can support many branches. In fact, I never cut my branches away, very seldom, because my tree is too weak to produce a crop on the branches. I mean, I believe in feeding the figs substantially, watering them substantially, and taking care of them, giving them adequate fertilizer. I like using my composted tea, and I have lots of other nutrients which I've talked about in other videos if you want to watch them. And you can see that this tree is it's going to produce a huge amount of fruit. And it's growing in the ground, in a ground bag. I call it my ground bag method. It's a grow bag. And this one's a 10-gallon, and you can just see how well it's doing. It works, and it's been there since early May. And all of these fruit, all of them, will come to fruition, and they'll be spectacular. Smith is one of my favorite figs, and it's a mid-season fig, so they'll all get ripe during the warm weather of summer. with warm nights, and I am looking forward to each and every one of them, I can tell you. All right, now let's just slip over here and I'll show you another ground bag success. And this is something that you may want to emulate. I've talked about this in previous videos, and I'm showing you how it's successful for me. Now, I can't guarantee that it will work for you because, you know, I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into this. You've got to know how not to overwater it or underwater it when the grow bag is in the ground like that, when it is. And there's some other things that you need to know about in terms of the feeding, but it's not that complicated because look how successful this is for me. Now, I want to share this method because in the fall, I'll dig these up, and it's not hard to dig them up. I'll make another video to show you how easy it is. And then I'll put them in proper winter storage, and I don't have to have dieback all the way to the ground. I keep my tree alive through the winter. And then guess what? Right back in the ground again next year. And in the Northeast, okay, it's a pain. It's an inconvenience. I understand that. But how much work is it to raise a beautiful fig tree and then have it die back all the way to the ground, okay? Or have it in a pot and the pots start to get too big, and of course the figs don't taste as good in a pot unless you use the ground bag method where the roots, I've got holes in the bag down there. I've shown this before several times, but there's holes in the bag and the roots can actually go into the surrounding soil to gather nutrients, and all of a sudden this tree, as you can see, and this one, you can see that it takes on characteristics of a wholly in-ground, completely in-ground fig. And that's what you want. And you're going to get a superior taste. And look at the vigor, look at the vitality. It's just so vigorous. Now this is a Latarula fig, Italian honey, okay? And look at the fruit on this Italian honey. It is completely loaded, okay? There's an abundance of fruit here that will come to fruition. And it's an early producer too. So it won't be long, and they'll be starting to get ripe. I wanted to feature these figs just to show you that the method does work. Now, these are just in-ground trees, and they have an abundance of fruit on them too. This one here is O'Rourke, and this is an unknown hardy Chicago type, just a Mount Etna. Okay, let's take a little walk over here. I wanted to show you something. While I was away, my son sent me a video. There were two Bribas that got ripe on my fig tree that is in the greenhouse here now. I've got to take them out back into the sun. And I wanted to get this, I wanted to record this. He ate the other two. He was tempted and he ate them. I said, sure, go ahead. And he didn't put them in the fridge. But there's one here left, and I should have probably picked it sooner. There it is. This is a Smith Briba, I believe, although it looks like it's growing in the node. He said it was a Briba. I think it's a Briba anyway. And this tree has lots of fruit too. This is much younger than the other tree. This is only the second year for this tree. And it's already 6 foot tall. And I can tell you it's very, very vigorous. Smith is, if you feed it properly and you don't pinch it when it's too young to drain all the strength out of it, and you let the root system expand, the following year you'll be rewarded with, hey, I've got a visit. Uh-oh. Oh.
She got it.
Oh, wow. Here, you want me to throw that for you?
Uh-oh.
Come on over here. I'm just making a quick video here.
Okay.
I'm gonna.
Any ripe ones?
Yeah, I've got the Briba that Marius left. Hold on, let me just pick this. It's overdone, overripe. I should have picked it yesterday, but we just got back and I wanted to make a video of it. Let's see.
Wow.
Let me take a look. I hope it's not spoiled. Oh, it's not spoiled.
I don't know, what's all that brown stuff on the bottom?
Yeah, it's not spoiled though.
Okay. Just so the baby.
Wow. I'll take it.
You test it first.
He said that the Briba that he tasted, he said they were delicious, but not quite as good as the main crop. Of course, you know how delicious Smith is with regard to the main crop.
Yeah,
Hope I'm not getting my fingers in the... I'm very ill-prepared here.
You mean hold it for me?
Here, take your half. Take half of that. There we go. There we go. Hey, I know you want some of this too, don't you?
She loves figs.
Let's see here. Oh, it's really good. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. You'll love it.
There you go.
You want that? Go ahead.
Oh, she does.
Okay. You can have
it.
You're like that. It's really good. Isn't it delicious?
It is good.
It's creamy, delicious.
It's better than it looks.
Yeah. Tangy and delicious. I love Smith. I love all my figs. Here's another Smith. And look how productive this tree is. Just loaded with fruit. And this is a young, I started this late last season, and already it's quite a tree, and it's got an abundance of fruit on it. So I wanted to show these trees real quickly in the greenhouse here. They're going back outside. This is a Bordeaux. And I've got a big Bordeaux right in the back. You can see it growing up over the top of the greenhouse over there in the back of the greenhouse that was in here last year, which had an abundance of fruit on it. And this one has an abundance of fruit. It's just loaded everywhere you look. Yeah, doesn't it look good? I can't wait. I like Bordeaux very much. Very fruitful, very productive, and very, very tasty. And I've mentioned this before, regardless of how much you water a Bordeaux, the figs are still delicious, and it tastes good in a pot, and not every tree does. I've spoken about that many times. These are a bunch of other varieties that I'm not going to bore you with, but they're doing really well. This is a tree that I will talk to you about. This is Long Yellow, and my friend Vito from New York sent this down to me in the spring from a cutting that he started over the winter. And Long Yellow, I'm very excited about this. I'm going to do a separate video on this when the time comes, because this is a very, very special honey fig. Now, I've not tasted this fig, but my friend Vito has, and he lives in Zone 4 in New York. Can you believe it? And this tree actually comes to fruition for him each year. And people that know a lot about figs have visited Vito, and they've mentioned too just how spectacular this particular variety is. It's an unusual variety. I'll get into it more at another time. But look at the shape, the heart-shaped leaves, the spade leaves. That's a sign usually that, you know, a certain segment, I'll say, of genetic drift figs displays that have a superior, I think, quality. Whenever you see these kinds of leaves, it's an extensive subject. I don't want to get into an extensive subject. I'm going to make a quick video. But believe me when I tell you, when you see this particular leaf on a tree, pay particular attention to that tree, because much more often than not, it's going to display superior characteristics. And I've got a theory about that, and I've got a theory about genetic drift when we're talking about fig tree variations within a particular variety, and how they differ because of geographic separation, and not only geographic separation, meaning maybe from different countries, but also historic separation or separation of time. Sometimes these figs are separated for who knows how long, 100 years, 200 years. I mean, Pliny the Elder in Italy, in Rome, in ancient Rome, 2,000 years ago, described, I believe it was 29 varieties of figs, several of which we have identified from his description, and that was 2,000 years ago. And one of them, I believe, is Cadota, which was around that long ago. So imagine that maybe some Roman brought some of that to a different country that had been conquered, maybe to Spain or some, maybe who knows where, or maybe Greece. And it stayed in a different geographic environment for hundreds of years, 2,000 years. And of course, even though it might be stemming back, the same exact variety that Pliny the Elder listed in his description of 29 figs 2,000 years ago, before the eruption of Mount Vesuvius and the destruction of Pompeii, still, it would be very different today. Have similarities, but it would, because of genetic drift and because of time, and because different figsters, horticulturalists over the centuries selected different branches and broke those branches off and propagated them, and they had slightly different characteristics. Give you an example. I don't want to go really long into this, and I am, and I apologize, but it's an interesting subject, okay, that needs to be discussed, okay? Suppose a farmer, 2,000 years ago had a frost, and suppose he noticed in his orchard that of the same variety, okay, he had several of the same varieties growing in his yard, and he noticed that one of them held up to the frost better than the others. So he thought about that, and he said, well, wait, let me go over and clip some of these branches off and see if I can't start these, okay, because this particular tree showed some resilience, okay? Now, it had been a branch, a cutting from another tree at a different time earlier, and he saw that it had superior qualities with regards to withstanding the frost. So he started to propagate those. And then he eventually discarded the others, okay? And that's called human selection, not natural selection like was discussed by Darwin, okay, in The Origin of Species, the best book I've ever read in my entire life, okay? But we're talking about human selection, just like humans select dogs. All the dog breeds, look how many dog breeds. Those were human selections where humans looked at the qualities of an offspring, okay, a litter, and said, I'm keeping this dog, and I'm going to breed this dog with that dog. And you, oh gosh, you got a great litter, and I love the quality of that particular dog in your litter, so let's breed these together. And then they kept doing that over time. Okay, we're talking about human selection, not natural selection, which is a wonderful thing, but takes longer and longer. But through human selection, how do you think we got all these figs? These fantastic, marvelous figs. It was because of the people before us, the growers, and all of their efforts before us, okay? From ancient times until now. Okay, so much for that lesson. We might go into that lesson again another time, because I'd like to make more examples. But this particular fig is what sparked that discussion, the long yellow, because I have some theories about it. It's a very interesting honey fig. Again, I've never tasted it. So far, the best honey fig that I've eaten, I say by far, personally, is Peter's Honey. And I just love the variety or the strain I have. It could be a special strain. It could be a variant. I don't know. And I featured it many times. I love it. But we're going to move on. This is Genevieve's Nero, okay, which is extremely similar to Italian 258. I think the same. I've talked about that. And look how many fruits there are. It is producing an abundance of fruit all over the place. And this is getting pretty big. This is its last year that I'll be able to keep it in the greenhouse at all. Of course, these figs will go back out into the sun now that I'm home. The storm's over, and it's time to put them back in the sun. You need to get your figs in the sun, and don't keep them in the greenhouse, because if you want good flavor, they need to ripen in the sun, or at least have some sun. And during that process, the more the better. Let's just take a quick walk. There's one little other thing I wanted to show. I mentioned before, that there is another San Pedro type that I'm growing that I do recommend besides Desert King, or I like to call Dessert King because I think that's really the name of it. It's gotten changed in time. And so I think what I want to do is take a quick walk around and show you the other variety. I have a nice specimen that's growing, and it's got a ripe fig on it. Again, my son mentioned, I forgot something. Let me go back. Okay, let me go back. Because my son sent me a video of the first black Madeira, Briba, which I was kind of surprised, but it got right. And he sent that to me, and I was away. And he said that it was very, very delicious, but not as good as the main crop. And usually the Bribas aren't. Only on certain varieties they are as good, or, you know, very, very rarely as good or better. Very rarely. But I wanted to show you this Black Madeira. It's in its 3rd year, and it's quite vigorous. Again, it has those superior leaves I mentioned to you, the shape. You can see them. Okay? And this is getting to be quite tall. And it's just got an abundance of fruit on it. And they're coming along so nicely. This tree was very productive last year. And it's only, again, it's only in its 3rd year. And it's doing so well. So I wanted to encourage, as I've done before, I wanted to encourage people to grow Black Madeira, because you can do it. And I didn't give this tree hardly any head start, special head start this year. I was late getting back from a vacation. And it hasn't spent much time in the greenhouse at all. I keep it outside in the sun. And it's just got an abundance. As you can see, everywhere you look, there's fruit on this thing. Quite a bit of fruit. Very, 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 very healthy tree. And it's only in its 3rd year of production. And you can see how vibrant and the color and, you know, how full of life it is. You know, and I feed it all the things that I mentioned to you about in other videos. I feed it all those things. But it's getting quite big. And I'm going to have to cut this back for cuttings in the fall and grow some. I haven't grown a lot of them. You know, I try not to have too many of one variety. Here is I do have a couple Black Madeira. I've talked about it before. This is a grafted Black Madeira I've mentioned before. And it's doing very well. It's younger. And I have Preto. We'll talk about these things as they start to produce fruit. But I wanted to walk around and show you that other San Pedro fig. This video is much longer than I had intended. I've got so much I want to talk to you about. I want to share so much. And honest to God, I think I could just run a continuous video and never end. I mean, I'm looking around. I want to talk to you about so many things. But because of that rainstorm that we just had, all my barrels are filled with wonderful rainwater. I love when that happens, you know, and because, as I've mentioned, you know, I love using rainwater rather than faucet water. Now, this tree is another Ronde Bordeaux, and it's rather large, as you can see. It's a beauty, and it too, there's your Ronde Bordeaux. You can see that this tree, it's going to produce just so much wonderful, luscious fruit. Look at it. Look at all these fruits. Every branch is just loaded with fruit. You know, it's an abundant producer. It's so healthy and vibrant. It's just a wonderful, I just can't say enough good things about Ronde Bordeaux. It's one of my favorite cultivars, and I recommend it strongly. And it's, again, one of those varieties that just tastes spectacularly delicious even in a pot. And I grow this in the ground too in 2 places, and they're very, very good. You know, there's something I want to add to this conversation. There are a lot of people that think, and I thought that maybe it was true, that think that Ronde Bordeaux is a very winter hardy tree. You know, like its sister, Violet de Bordeaux. It is not. So, in my opinion, for what it's worth, my often caveat, for those of you out there that are thinking about growing Ronde Bordeaux in the ground, I would not suggest it in 7A. 7B would be the coldest I would suggest. And I think it does marvelously in a pot, and it tastes spectacular in a pot. I would recommend that you probably stay with the pot. But if you're going to grow it in anything warmer than 7A, okay. But I noticed that it is not as hardy as is thought in the fig community, and I had previously hoped for. It's nowhere near as hardy as its sister tree, Violet de Bordeaux. Okay, the beauty of Ron de Bordeaux is that it's so much earlier and I think superior in a lot of ways. I prefer it. And I do like Violet de Bordeaux, but Violet de Bordeaux and the variations of that variety, but they're a little late in 7A if you have it in the ground. It's a little late, and very often it will, not ripen sufficiently before the cold winds come and the rains, and that will all spoil the fruit. So I don't recommend growing Violet de Bordeaux in the ground. Now you could try Ron de Bordeaux, but you need to cover it in 7A. And in 7B, I noticed that it takes a beating, even in 7B. It's not as tough as a lot of the other figs that I grow, like Celeste, or like Italian Honey, or Brown Turkey, or just a host of, or Sultane. Sultane seems to be a little more winter hardy than that. And some of the Adriatic figs are, I think, more hardy. Okay, this tree, I'll quickly tell you about this. This is Ben's Golden Rainbow, Golden Riverside, which is now called Golden Rainbow. Look how big the leaves are. You can see characteristic. It is exactly like yellow longneck. There is no difference. I've grown them long enough that I feel that they are exactly the same. Again, all that often caveat, for what it's worth, I do believe they are the same. And how sure am I at this point? Very sure that they are the same. This is yellow longneck. You can look at some of my videos from last year. Okay, of course, remember the color of the fig will vary with the region that you're growing it in, the conditions that you're growing it in, what you're feeding it, at what time of the year it's ripening, what the weather was like when it's ripening, when it rained last, what was the most frequent rain, or how much rainfall, regular rainfall have you had? There's so many, or do you have it in a pot? Do you have it in the ground? There's so many variables. It just goes on and on and on and on. But you can look at Fig Feast, my videos, Fig Feast, and there's a few other ones where I feature the yellow longneck, and in my opinion, it is the same. And this year I'm going to completely prove it once and for all, but I've already taken fruit from both. I'd like to take time. I always reserve judgment. I don't like to jump the gun, and I've talked about that before. I've mentioned it in several of my videos. I've written some posts about it on some of the fig forums that I think they're the same a year ago. And I have a long history with yellow longneck, a very long history, of 20-year history with yellow longneck, which is another story, and I've told that in one of my videos too. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, growing them both, and that's the only way I prefer to do it. Okay, I prefer to grow them and take my time to make judgment, to pass judgment. But I believe it is the same as yellow longneck. Okay, so let's just take a quick walk around. I want to go to this final fig that I wanted to discuss real quickly because people have been asking me about it. It's the other recommendation of a San Pedro type besides the Desert King or Dessert King. Very quickly I'll show you. Here's another Golden Riverside. Now this is UC Davis Golden Riverside. It's not Ben's, or it's not the Golden Rainbow now. It's the other that I featured last year. And you can see it's a very, very prolific specimen. There's just big, beautiful. These are big, and they were very tasty last year too. You can see this feature where I featured the Briba last year in figs that wow ya. Okay, and in later videos I showed the main crop, and they're very delicious. This is just, they're very hefty. They're a very big fig. But they're not the same as Ben's Golden Riverside or the Golden Rainbow, which it is called now. Let's go over to this San Pedro type. This is red Lebanese. Here's the San Pedro type. It's called Feliciano Bianco. It's what the people call it. I believe that's the proper pronunciation. Who knows? Potato, potato, who cares? But Feliciano Bianco is the name that I've heard other people attribute to this variety. This came from my Uncle Mario. It came from Teramo, Italy. And you can also see this fig that's featured in the video that I have that's called Fig Varieties of the World that my friend Danny Yakir sent to me in 2004, a year after he had visited the United States and visited me and took some cuttings. He took the cuttings of my Uncle Mario's tree. And in that video, her say, Uncle Mario, and her mention it, you know, say, Uncle Mario's fig Lou, and that's the one, if you want to see it featured there too. It's a San Pedro type, okay, so you have to have the wasp for the second crop to mature, or they'll just drop off without pollination, and these will. But the strange thing about this particular variety is that about 20% of the main crop will still get ripe. It's a strange characteristic of this San Pedro type. It is a true San Pedro type, but it's very interesting. It's very tasty, okay? I don't know that it's as tasty as Desert King. It depends on how ripe it is. And again, the conditions, there's just a litany of reasons why, you know, maybe you test the fig in one given year, any given year, and it's not as good as the last or the next. And that's just the way it is, okay? But this tree produces an abundance of fruit. They do get ripe. The first crop does get ripe. About 20% of the main crop will go on to fruition, but they are very poor in quality. And they're completely different. As different as I've ever seen a main crop from a Briba crop. I don't think I've ever seen an example of how different the main crop can be from the Briba crop as with this particular variety. Now, I call this Fuliciano because my uncle always called this, when he brought it to the United States about 80 years ago or so, maybe 75, he always called it Fuliciano. That's what he called it, which sounds a lot like Feliciano Bianco, really, if you think about it. And it came out of a mountainous area. He was pretty separated from a lot of the rest of Italy. And this was a very, very popular tree in his little community in the mountain town. And he brought it back. It was one of two varieties that he brought back with him when he came to the United States. My Uncle Mario and I, we were very close, and we grew figs together. We were both fig fanatics, and of course, you can tell that I'm still a fig fanatic. But I've kept this alive. I kept this growing for many, many years because I just refuse to give it up, okay? It just reminds me of my Uncle Mario, and I think it is a good cultivar. It's very, very winter hardy, very hardy. I've got cousins that grow this, okay, and they have it in the ground, and very often every other tree will die to the ground, but this one doesn't, okay, or have some dieback, but not a lot of dieback, and it will still produce figs the following year. It's a very hardy fig, and so it has merit. And there are good things about this variety, good enough for me to keep it in my collection. If I were going to probably grow just a San Pedro type, I probably would recommend the Desert King over it. But not really, because it's different. In fact, there's a ripe one right here. My son ate several. Let's just open this one up. I don't know what I'm doing here.